Okay. So to start with lighting, the first thing I want you to do is create a camera. And there's a lot of different options for cameras, but I just want it to be a really straightforward camera. So to create a camera, you go to create up at the top, and then cameras. And there's some options, but just choose the very first one. Now I've already set up a camera, but I'm going to show you how you can position your camera. And you can see this one's called camera 2. This one, the first one I made was camera 1. That's pretty obvious. So you select your camera, and then have 2 views up, at least 2 views. Here's my perspective view, and then this is going to be my camera view. So it's, maybe, well, so all you need to do is say panels, and then, or, lay out 2 panes side by side, and then with my camera selected, I'm going to say look through selected, and you can see this is my character's sweater material, because I'm at the very bottom of his feet. So as you can see, if I have look through selected, it's updating in the perspective view where my camera's positioned, or I can move it in my perspective view, and it's going to update in the actual camera view. So you just position it around until you get a pretty good view of your character. So I don't want his head cut off or his feet. So the other thing you need to do is actually tap the space bar, so you're seeing, you can see that his head is cut off and his feet are cut off at the bottom. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit more. And the other camera I made, I was more positioning it close up so I can see his face better. But just to get a full body view, I'm gonna position it more like this. So once you're happy with your camera, a really important thing to do is to lock your camera. I think I showed you guys how to lock your rigs or whatever. So you just select the attributes in the channel box, right click, and then go to lock selected. And you can see that you have the gray bars in front of the attributes. This is really important because I've done it a million times. Everyone who's worked in Maya has done this. You think you're in your perspective view and you start rotating around. In fact, let me just do that. Let's pretend that I forgot that I was in my camera view, and I start moving around and trying to reposition my camera. And then I realize, oh no, that's my camera 2. That's not my perspective view. So a little trick to get you back to the camera that you wanted, there's right next to the P on your keyboard, there's a left bracket and a right bracket. If you hit the left bracket, it will take you backwards through the camera positions. So there's my camera position that I wanted. So I'm going to right click and say lock selected. So now if I try to accidentally move it around, I can't. My camera's locked. And of course, it's super easy to unlock it if you want to adjust it, you just say unlock selected. All right, so that's the camera. The next thing I'm going to make just real quickly is just a cube. And you guys might already have your environment made. Hopefully you've had, a ground plane. And this guy, I didn't really have a story for this guy, so I didn't really make an environment for him. So I'm just kind of making things as I go. So if you don't have an environment, just to test your lighting, especially for shadows, that's what we need this cube for. So I went to create, polygon primitives, cube, and it's sitting right underneath him. It's a little bitty cube, so I'm going to hit R and scale it. Why isn't it scaling? Uh-oh, there we go. So I'm scaling it up. I'm going to go to the front view. I'm just kind of creating a little room for him. I'm trying to, wow, Maya's really slowing down.
Have you deleted history recently?
No, I haven't really worked on anything to delete its history. Come on, Maya. So the only thing I can think of that what might be slowing down, I know we've been having internet issues. My wife told me just before class that the internet was down. Thankfully, it's back up and running. So, okay, I'm in the front view. I'm gonna hold down D and V on my keyboard, and I'm gonna snap this down to the bottom of my little room that I'm creating. Then I'm gonna hold down X and drag it up to the ground plane. Come on. Okay, there's my ground plane. And I'm gonna rotate it on a 45-degree angle, just because I'm trying to get a corner. He's in the corner of the room. So rotate Y, I'm gonna say 45. Come on, Maya. Let's see. Why isn't it selecting? Here's my box. I don't know what's going on. Object mode. Okay, there's my box. So Y 45 degrees. Okay, so there's my angle. And I'm gonna rotate this around a little bit in my viewer, because I'm gonna delete 3 walls. So we have a floor and two side walls to make a corner. So I'm gonna go to face mode as soon as Maya lets me. Select these faces. So I'm not gonna give them, actually, maybe I'll give this one a ceiling. I'm gonna delete these. The other one I didn't do a ceiling, but I'm just gonna give this guy a ceiling to see what that looks like with the lighting, for lighting purposes. Delete. Oops. No, I didn't want to delete that one. Come back. Okay. So here's my wall. Oh man, it's so painful. Okay. This is my old wall that I made. I'm just going to delete that just to see what it looks like if I add a ceiling. Because if I add a ceiling, we should get some bounce light happening also. Okay, so far I've made a camera, or I made 2 cameras, but I'm going to go with camera 2 for now. And I made this this little room, and of course I'm going to rename it immediately. So I'm going to call it room_geo. I'm not going to move it, so I'm going to freeze its transformations. I don't need to animate it or anything. So, and these are steps you're going to do with every object. You delete its transformations. Of course, I had a little bit of history because I did some deleting. So edit, delete by type, history. And I'm going to put it on a layer. So I already made a layer for background. So I'm going to just add that to the layer. Okay, so now it's on its layer. So is anyone familiar with 3-point lighting? Are there any photographers?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was talking to a friend, when I was working in Real Effects, I was talking to a friend of mine who was in the lighting department. And so he was helping me set up a summer animation camp program that I was trying to get going. And I was all excited to show him my 3-point lighting system. And he just cringed. He can't stand 3-point lighting systems because they're so rudimentary. But essentially the way it's done in the industry, you don't limit yourself to just 3 lights. You use as many lights as you need to create the effect that you're looking for, the mood. If you need a light right up on the person's face and just bring down its intensity a lot so you can pick up, some little details in their face or something, you do that. I know Maya, Maya has this, especially with Arnold, has these dome lights. And when I was in architecture, I really spent a lot of time trying to use the tools to get realistic lighting that gave you the azimuth. You could play with the azimuth and the latitude and longitude and the time of day and the season, all these the time of the year, everything. And I could never get it to work. The lighting simulations just never seemed to do what I wanted them to do, even though I was using real world numbers. And that's when I learned, and then when I got into the industry, I learned that that's not how lighters light. They just use any and every light they need to. And you don't want to go crazy and make tons and tons of lights, especially not for this little project. But lighters use everything that they have at their resources to create what they want. And generally what they're going to do is create small lights. Up to this point, I've really only used spotlights, like you would see on a stage, and you can do a lot with spotlights. They're pretty easy, and people like in the industry, they've used spotlights a lot in the past because you can control their attributes pretty easily. Their settings are easy to adjust, where some of the other ones, directional lights, don't always work as nicely. And we're not going to go into all the different lighting types, but a lot of the videos that I'm watching, and even at school at BGSU, it seems like everyone's, I mean, there's the Arnold dome light, but that has some issues. So what I'm seeing a lot of people using is area lights. So that's the demo that I'm going to give you guys today. So in fact, I'm going to select these three and just put them on a layer and turn them off. So this will be my lights. These will be my lights. So, and I'm going to include, I'll send you guys a link, aside from my video, I'm going to send you guys some links to some lighting tutorials online too, because there's a lot of good ones. But the main idea of 3-point light system is that you're going to have a key light, which, and I'm going to make my key light. So we're going to ignore these lights over here and create. We're going to go over to Arnold, and we're going to go to lights, and we're going to use this the area light. And you can see there's not a spotlight in Arnold. Maybe this photometric light might be similar to the spotlight I'd used in the past, but we're going to use this area light. So it drops in this area light, and I'm going to pull it back, and think of this as a photo studio where this guy's going to have his picture taken for his graduation or whatever, and we want to light it in a way that highlights his features, his face, maybe his shapes, the colors, whatever. So what is a little hard to get used to for me in Arnold is the intensities are much higher. You have to set them much higher. So in Maya, the regular Maya settings for a spotlight, intensity 1 is pretty bright. But if you set this to intensity 1, it's going to be it's going to be so dark you're not going to be able to see it. So here's my attributes. So I have my light selected. Actually, before I go to the attributes, what's something that I need to do immediately as soon as I've created a light?
Lock it in place.
Well, not yet, because I'm still adjusting. I don't know. I mean, that's a good idea. I do need probably at some point to lock its position, but not just yet.
You want to name it?
Very good. So, because I'm going to create 3 lights, and I want to be sure not to confuse. They're going to have different intensities and different purposes. So this one's called AI Area Light 1. I'm going to get rid of the 1 and say underscore key, so that I know when I create the key light, the fill light, and the rim light, this is my key light. And this is going to be really important when we start to use something that's called light linking, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So here's my key light. So if I have my camera created, I'm going to go to this Arnold just next to the help and say render. Oops, I already opened it. Let me open it again. Arnold, render. Okay, so you can see this is pitch black. There's another thing, there's a problem. It's rendering from my perspective shape, my perspective camera. I created a camera, so I need to actually make it render from my camera that I've created. So again, this is still black because this intensity. So now I have my light selected. I'm going to go to the attribute editor, and I'm going to play with the intensity. Let's see. I'm trying to think where I should put this so it's out of the way. I want to keep it up. Well, I'll just minimize it. Anyway, so here are the settings for your light. Intensity. I was just playing with it, and 100 works pretty well for me. So if I set it to 100. And you can see it's already showing. So there's, and I didn't even have to say render. This button right here, at the very bottom of the Maya, you see the little description of that button. It says automatically update any changes in the scene and restart the rendering. So any changes I make, it's going to automatically do this. So let's say that looks pretty good. It looks like a fairly sunny day. He's got some nice shadows, and you can see the shadows are kind of not pixelated, but they're kind of rough. So I can work on the shadows. But the first thing I want to do is, so actually, let's say this is more of a sunny day. So it's not just white light. There's maybe a little bit of yellow because it's warmer light. So you can play with the color a little bit. And you can see as soon as I've done that, it creates more of a warm tone to it. And of course, you can go the other direction. And colors are really important with lighting because they really help to set the mood. If you're going for a really sad piece, maybe someone died in your story. Very often, you'll see when there's a death scene or a funeral, they almost always go to a stormy day. There's rain and it's cloudy and it's gray, and they even add some blue to it to make it cooler. Whereas fight scenes are normally really warm and bright or whatever. So yeah, color is important. The intensity, we can play a little bit with exposure, but you can see also that this is a really hot spot on the floor, and I don't want that to be so hot. So he's probably, the light is probably too close. So if I'm mimicking the sun, I should adjust this. Probably it needs to be a little bit higher, and there's no, I was thinking maybe I could have a window or whatever, but I didn't do much modeling. I just, one thing I'm going to switch though is the move settings. I'm going to switch it from world to object, and this is just so I can have better control of the light. So you can see if I pull it back, it's gonna pull the light straight back instead of having to pull in the Z and the X to get it to where I want. I can also hit rotate, hit E for rotate, and maybe position it down a little bit more as soon as Maya lets me. There we go. So you get pretty quick results, pretty nice results pretty quickly. So yeah, go back to attribute editor. Maybe, yeah, so maybe I'll bump the resolution of the shadow. 512 is probably too low. I'm going to say 1024 and see what that looks like. So I'm focusing on what the shadow is going to, I'm sorry, yeah, the shadow's casting on the wall here. So as you can see, it's getting better. You want to be careful though. If you go too high, this really slows down your computer. Anyway, so that's the key light. So I'm going to minimize this for a second. So the key light is generally closer to the face. It's the primary light. The fill light is usually on the opposite side of the character. So again, this is our photo studio, and I'm going to hit Control D. With my light selected, I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to move it around to the other side. So the fill light is more or less opposite of the key light, and it's going to be less intense because we're just trying to pick up some of the air. Very often, especially with a human character with a strong jaw, the shadow makes the underneath the jaw really dark, and it's sometimes you just lose the model. So, and it doesn't have to be exactly 180. So I had this one intensity at 100. So just for starters, I'm going to set the intensity here to 50. And if the key light is warm, let's say the fill light is maybe a little bit cooler. So maybe somewhere in this area. And this is really subtle, so you may not see the difference, but just to balance it. And then there's something else I forgot to do. I need to rename it. So select my fill light. Come on. And then I'm gonna change this to AI area light fill. All right, so I've added a camera. I'm sorry, I've added a light, and you can already see it's creating some difference. Also, one thing that I would recommend doing, I made a layer for the original lights. Let me actually delete those because I want to show you guys. It's important to, like with everything else, organize your lights with layers, because you want to be able to determine which light is doing what and which one is working and which one isn't working. And you can turn them off and on to very quickly determine which ones are working for you and which ones you need to adjust. So maybe you use just the key light by itself, or just a fill light and the key light, or just the key light and the rim light, but you can alternate back and forth. All right, so I deleted all my original lights just so I could play with these ones. So I'm going to call this light key layer. And then I'll make a new layer for this guy. And I'll call it light rim layer. And I'm going to create one more light. So I'm going to Control D again. And I'm going to call this one, oops, that wasn't rim, that was fill. Anyways, that's my light rim. So I need to rename this layer because it's the wrong layer. So I'll just call it fill, save it. And then move this out. Okay, so this is my rim light, and the intensity is going to be quite a bit less than the other two. And it's more of a backlight. In fact, sometimes it's called backlighting. But it's called rim light because generally it creates a little outline of the character to help further define the silhouette of your character. And one important thing about these area lights is, oops, so I'm accidentally selecting my my box. I need to lock this layer, restrict this so that I don't accidentally grab it. There we go. Hopefully it's not going to move as slowly for you guys as it's moving for me, because this is really slow. So here's my rim light attributes. I'm going to set it to 25% of what the intensity. So my key light, and this, you don't have to use these exact numbers. You can play with them. So my key light I set it to 100. My fill light, I set it to 50. And then my rim light, I set it to 25. And let's see, I just want to make sure. Yeah, my intensity is 50. And I'm going to leave the fill light, actually the fill light, not the fill light, the rim light is still blue. I don't want it to be blue. I'm going to set that one back to white. And again, this may not work for your environment or your animation, the mood you're trying to create. I'm just playing with lights. So here's my rendering of these three lights, and you can't really see the fill light, so I probably need to adjust it. You should see maybe his back light up a little bit better, but for the most part, a super simple scheme, and it's working pretty well to show off the character. But these, you can see they're not doing very well with the environment. So that's where you want to play with what's called the light linking. So before I do anything else, I'm going to say File, Save Scene, so I don't lose my work. And I'm thinking Maya might crash on me because it's acting up. All right, so I saved it and got my cameras, got my lights. Oh, I didn't create a rim layer, so here's my light underscore rim. Save that. All right, now let's see what it looks like if I just take out my key lights. Thought it was going to render it. What happened? That looks the exact same. I turned off my key light. No. That's worked in the past. Normally, if I just put them on layers, you can turn the layer off, and it will show you the rendering without the. All right. So the other way to do it, if that doesn't work, here's my intensity. I'm going to set the intensity for my key light down to 0, and I know that's going to work. So yeah, that's what it looks like without the key light. So maybe I want to see what it looks like with the key light at 100, because that was pretty decent, but without the fill light. So I have it set to 50. I'm going to set this to 0. And if you have 2 screens, it's even better because you can have your rendering just up on the other screen. My screen is kind of small, so real estate is really valuable, especially because my eyes are so bad. So this is what it looks like with just, actually that's my, I have my fill light. Oh, I'm sorry. I set my, sorry, I wanted to show you the fill light without the key light. So here's, or you know what, let's do this. I'm going to set my intensity for my key light to 0. We already looked at that, but maybe I need to bump up the intensity of my rim light. So actually, I set the wrong one. So the intensity here is, I set that one to 0 on accident. So I'm going to make this 25%. Oops. Let's see if that makes any difference. Maybe 50%. What does that look like? So it's starting to pick up there. But it's also really, the rim light is really just for my character. You can see if I zoom in here, it's starting to pick up some of the lighting on his back. But I don't want it to influence the room itself. I don't want it to cast shadows. So what I'm going to actually do, I should turn off, with my rim light selected, I'm going to turn off cast shadows. And probably my fill light too. So this may differ depending on what you want to do with your lights, but I'm gonna turn off. I'm only gonna have the, oops, I don't want to do that. I want to move it. I'm only gonna have the key light cast shadows. Oh, come on, Maya. I moved my fill light on accident. Okay, there we go. So I was going to turn off my cast shadows on my fill light also. There they are. Okay. And I only want the rim light and my fill lights. In this example, it may be different for you, but in my example, I only want them to light my character. I don't want them to light my environment. So I'm going to minimize that for a second and unrestrict my background, my room. Make sure I named it properly. So room geo, okay, that's important, and I'm going to show you why. So to change these settings so that the only light that is cast in the room is the key light, I'm going to go to Windows, Relationship Editors, Light Linking, and then Light Centric. You can do Object Centric as well, but I just prefer Light Centric, whatever's easier for you to understand. So here's my key light. And if I click on it, it shows everything that it's assigned to light up. There's a couple of spheres. I don't know which these spheres are. But anyways, the key light is, I want it to light up everything. The fill light, oops, let me restrict my background again. Okay, so my fill light, I do not want that to light my background or my ground plane. So I'm going to select or deselect room geo. So it should go dark. Same thing with my rim light. Yeah, so that was already done. So let's see what it looks like without those two lights on the background now. Let me just re-render it. Oh, you know, I also forgot to, I have my intensity for my key light still way down. So I'm going to turn this intensity for my key light back to 100, I think is what I was using. No, I don't think I put it in the right place. Let me try that again. There we go. So yeah. So yeah, for this assignment, you're going to create a key light, a fill light, and a rim light. And it's really going to vary what you do with them, because if you're thinking of like different types of lighting scenes for different types of movies, like film noir is very, very different lighting from a Western or an action movie or a romance. So your lighting is going to depend on what story you're trying to tell. So do you guys have any questions about lighting?
Not for now.
All right, so like I said in the beginning, for the sake of keeping this primitive, we're just going to work with area lights. There's a lot more you can do with lighting, and you can make it much more fancy. We're just using 3 area lights, and you're going to name each one of them key, fill, rim, and position them around your characters so that they highlight your characters in a nice way. And then you also need to create a camera, and you're going to render to that camera. So make sure that you position it the way you want it to, and then lock it. So, and you can always unlock it and adjust it. You need some kind of background created. Hopefully your environment's already created so you can see what your lighting scheme looks like with your environment. But yeah, so that's pretty much lighting.